Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of A Cup of Joe. My name is Joe Escobedo, and with me on the show today is Jordan Carroll. Jordan is the remote job coach. Thanks so much for being on the show, Jordan.
Thank you, Joe. And I don't have a cup of Joe. It's a little late for caffeine for me, but I'll let you drink 2 cups for us.
Awesome. So, secret, no one really knows. I just unveiled it. I don't actually drink coffee. This is full of water.
Oh, no way, dude. I just exposed you.
Exactly. Now they know. The secret. Cat's out of the bag. People are going to boycott the show now. So, you don't actually drink coffee? You poser.
Wow. I don't drink coffee anymore either. I drink matcha tea pretty much exclusively.
There we go.
So we're in the similar camp.
Awesome. So yeah, the reason I want to catch up for a couple different reasons. I think one of which is the whole remote working thing, which you've been doing for many, many years, and I think are now coaching people on that. It's something a lot of organizations and executives are forced to do now because of COVID. So really finding out about your tips for that. And also kind of some of the things you've been doing in terms of the coaching, the consulting, the group mentoring, the online courses. Because like I mentioned just a minute ago, that's something that we're embarking on with my company. And I obviously would love to know kind of your journey and how you get that started. But before that, let's talk about remote. So you've been working remotely for how long now?
It's interesting because I go back and forth in my head on like when was the first time that I worked remote. And it was actually, I found a job on Craigslist as a remote telemarketer for an artist public relations firm. It was just super sketchy. Like, dude, I think it was kind of a scam. And I was selling their stuff for a couple of months in college in between my classes, and I had 2 other part-time jobs. And the story behind that was that the company I was interviewing with at the time said, "You don't have enough sales experience. We want someone with sales experience." I was like, "I'm coming out of college. What do you expect?" And then I eventually was like, "All right, I'm going to come back and show you that I can get some sales experience." Found the first thing I could on Craigslist. And there's a reason why that job's so easy to get. No one wants to do it.
Yeah.
It's just like circulating numbers. It pops up a number on your computer. You click it, you dial out from your computer wherever you are, and then you got to go through a script with someone to get them to sign up for this. So I did that for a couple of months back in that was probably 7 years ago. But the first full-time working remotely was closer to 5 years ago.
5 years ago. And since then you've kind of lived all over the world. I think that's one of the advantages of being a remote worker. You're originally from, where are you from originally?
I'm from the Bay Area in California. And I think you're right, man. It's remote work is not just not working at an office. And you know this, right? It's like, it's building a lifestyle. It's building what it is that you want in your life. And it's so much more than that. It's the democracy. Darren Murph from GitLab, largest remote company in the world, said this, and he said it's the democratization of choice in everything in your life. And I was like, dude, this is gold. I love that because that's truly what it is.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think that's one of the reasons that I decided to start my company and have the team remotely is to, one, give myself the flexibility and freedom because I have 2 young kids, so I can take them to school when I want and things like that. And also it gives the team the flexibility. So a lot of the team members have like side hustles. Like one of them is like runs like a baking company on the side. So I'm like, as long as, get stuff done, doesn't matter where you do it from, when you do it, just, stuff gets done. So I think.
And how loyal is that person going to be to you? Because you're giving them that opportunity that in a lot of cases they wouldn't get.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's part of the reasons that our turnover is extremely low is because we give people full freedom to kind of do the stuff they want as long as everything gets done. And also the advantage I think a lot of people don't realize until now is you get access to the best talent from around the world. Like we're not just limited in Singapore. We don't just limited talent in Singapore. We have talent from India, the Philippines. We have talent from Eastern Europe, some copywriters from the U.S. So we really try to pick the best people, doesn't matter where they're at. And I think it's one of the advantages of working remotely.
Yeah, it works both sides. I think for the people that are within this mindset of wanting flexibility in their lives, it's great. For the companies who want a larger talent pool and access to that talent, fantastic as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think now, unfortunately, there's a lot of talent in the market right now from all over the world, with the, recession, things like that. So it's a good time for those who have not thought about working remotely to at least try it. It doesn't hurt in the current situation. And like I said, another thing I wanted to get your thoughts on is you've already kickstarted your own, your online courses, your group coaching, and things like
Hmm.
that. So, how did you get started with that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I always found that I was a mentor. I've always loved being a mentor. I've always loved being a coach. I've actually never had any formal coaching training. And I think that that's vastly overrated. I think that there are certain people that have callings in life to be coaches, to be consultants, to be whatever they want to be. And there's on the job training. So you find people that you can mentor or coach, and then you'll learn that way. So a number of years ago, I mean, throughout my life, I've been quote unquote that mentor, but was not getting paid for it. And then a number of years ago, like 3 years, my first coaching client where I worked with someone who was actually paying me, and I had no idea what I was doing. Right? You go through that stage of like, what, like, how am I qualified? The imposter syndrome sneaks up, and you
Yeah.
just go through this whole stage of, why am I telling this person what to do? But the key of coaching is not telling people what to do.
Mm.
It's actually giving people the resource and the empowerment to search within themselves to realize what they need to do.
Mm.
Most of us know what we need to do. We just need someone to kick our ass a little bit and hold us accountable. So I realized I was pretty good at that. And what was really important for me was eventually getting a niche, right? Because when you're coaching, there's so many different things you could coach people on. So for you, Joe, you're probably someone who would be in the realm of, a content coach or a brand coach or branding coach, but something that maybe you go very niche on
Mhm.
exactly your process of either packaging your services into a coaching program or figuring out how it is that you could service people and create transformation. For me, I had to figure out what is the transformation I'm creating. Because at the beginning, it was just like I was finding people that I had known in college or known in previous lives. And I was like, hey, I'm a little bit further in my career than you. I've been successful. Like, want to coach? And then
Yeah.
after a number of people doing that with, I was like, what I'm doing really well is within the career route, because I've had a very interesting career. I've been in a lot of different industries. I've had different roles. The chain link connection between all those was remote. And then
Mm.
I was like, everyone wants to be remote. So I'd worked for a Fortune 50 company, IBM, remotely. I've worked for my own businesses remotely, and I've worked for three to five startups remotely, both as freelance and full time. And in each of those circumstances, just what I realized was I was finding those jobs through my network. I wasn't applying like traditionally. And a lot of people don't know how to do a job search without having to go through the ATS and having to submit their application online. And I realized that I actually could teach people something that I had done myself, which I think is really important when you're coaching.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up some really good points. I think the first of which is people don't like to be told what to do. So not necessarily
Mm,
telling them, here's the path you should take, but like you said, sharing your own experiences, sharing resources so they can, discover themselves. And also, like you said, like someone who can keep them in check, or not keep them in check, but keep them like in
yeah,
line. Because a lot of times the biggest challenge with coaching consulting is people get very excited the first couple times, and then after that they
yeah,
implement it, or what, they're just like, I don't have time for this. So it kind of goes in the back burner. So how do
yeah,
you kind of keep the momentum going when people have that feeling like, I think I've had enough for now?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple things, and I want to comment first on being a good coach as well is also the questions that you ask. If you want better answers in life, you have to ask better questions. So in order to help someone achieve the ability to get their own answers for these questions that they have, you got to ask them really good questions.
Yeah.
When I think about what keeps someone motivated, or what I think about what keeps someone on their path they've committed to, first is all of that happens before they're even your client. All of that happens within their commitment to themselves, for one,
Yeah.
the expectations that you've set,
Mm.
and your ability through the process to also let them know that it's okay to be discouraged. When I first am onboarding a client, I think the onboarding process is one of the most crucial processes for any coach, because if you're onboarding someone, that is really their first deep dive into what this experience is going to be like for them. And you have a major chance to set up those expectations. So throughout the sales process, let's just say this, when someone enters my world through my email, through a conference that I do or whatever, I'm going to be taking them through several different touch points that allow them to see the exact expectations of what they should have coming onto the call. Then when they come on the call, I should be able to give them an opportunity to make a decision on if they want to work with me or not. And I should be making a decision for myself too. And then after that, it's all about expectation setting throughout the process and encouraging them when they get down. But to answer your specific question, it's all in that, what are you telling them before, right? Because if they think this is going to be easy, then yeah, their expectations is going to be a direct reflection of how disappointed they are.
That's a very good point. I mean, if you look at the youths, a lot of the YouTube promoters who are like, "Do you want to make $1 million, next month?" Like, obviously, you have been more realistic in your expectations. I think sharing your journey, kind of some of the struggles and things like that. But like you said, people understand that it is going to be a longer term commitment. But I think to your point, I think you articulate that through the content, through kind of all this everything you do. So it's a very, very good point, actually. It all starts with the actual call.
What about you? What do you like? How do you set expectations for clients when you're going into an engagement?
So very good question. So I try to do the same thing through my content. So really try to share, timelines. At least I wrote a post recently that said it took me 5 years to build my personal brand, and I took them, time, step by step on what it took to do that. But I was like, look, it's not something that takes overnight, but if you put in the commitment, it becomes self-sustainable and things like that. So now people get it. They're like, oh, okay, got it. I need to at least put in a couple of years before I get my brand off the ground. So that's one. And then I always try to start every initial meeting or the kickoff meeting with what's the end in mind. So where do you actually see yourself in 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and then a year, for example? So once I have those mini kind of milestones, I'll kind of work backwards and say, okay, here's what we need to do step by step throughout the process. Now, obviously, if there's any delay in the process on either side, then that's going to delay our milestone or our goal. So that's something that I try to set. Going back to your point of setting expectations from the kickoff call so they know exactly, okay, here's what we're going to be talking about, and then map it out. I think people need to see that kind of that timeline as well as kind of some of the topics you'll talk about. And I say, look, obviously we'll deviate depending on your current situation, your business, but at least these are some of the things we can expect to cover in the next few sessions.
Yeah, that's great. And I think being able to map it out up front it helps people visualize, because people learn differently too, and they conceptualize things differently. So for me, I'm a very hands-on learner, and I like to see an entire process as well as the details. Like, I'm a zoom out and zoom in kind of person. Those are both great. So I think however you can provide different angles, if you think about like the courses that I do, I teach those courses. Not only am I doing like videos like this where I'm talking, but I have PowerPoints, and then I have ones where the PowerPoints come up next to my face, and I have screen shares, and I have whiteboards. I literally have every mode there, and then every single lesson also has text version and worksheets and things like that, because it's so imperative that you meet people where they are too, as far as how they learn and as far as what their personality is. And that's one of the hardest things to do as a coach, I think, is within a system that you create, within strategies that you create, really understanding the nuances of how people learn and how they react to your coaching style.
That's a very good, I mean, I'm taking notes mentally of my own. So we're rolling out our courses, like I said, and I think that's
good thing we're recording too.
Yeah, I was going to say, definitely share this with the team, because I think it's one thing we've been talking about is like different formats as well, because I think for both, like I said, people learn from different perspectives. And also, like, it's even boring as the coach to do the same thing over and over. So like mixing it up with like, whiteboards, like you said, and PowerPoints, and then talking. It also helps us stay engaged and motivated, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
So like I said, I think one of your, keys to success you mentioned earlier is really niching down and focusing on kind of remote working. Has that helped you in terms of the online courses as well? Because online courses are becoming like super competitive now. Like everyone and their grandmother is creating an online course. So is that something you do early on and then really focus that throughout the entire kind of process?
What's been interesting is the importance of my course has changed dramatically over time. What I originally thought was going to be a revenue generation stream has actually just become the systemization for my process. And let me explain that. I offer like a high ticket coaching program where I take people through an 8-week program, and we're doing coaching within a group setting. And they have milestones and things that they're trying to hit each week. They're sharing stuff with me in between sessions, things like that. Now, I originally created this course in early 2018.
Okay.
And what I realized was I created this course for me. I didn't create it for anybody else, because as soon as I started noticing, like as soon as I started getting customers actually in the course, I noticed there was a lot of things that were out of order, or they weren't as clear as I thought they were, or they, you know, whatever you could think of as far as a course being unstructured, it was like that. And it was like, wow, I had all these grand dreams of like all this passive income and all that. Like, no, I don't think that's the reality for a lot of course creators. I think what the course has now become for me is a stable place for which I've changed it like 5 times since then, by the way, but it's become a honed, iterated system that my clients can go through without me to learn the system and the strategy, so that when we're on a coaching call, the coaching call is strategic. The coaching call is not learning the method. The coaching call is, I have a question about this part that I'm implementing from the method that I've been learning from your course. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've heard the same thing from a couple different coaches now. Would you say that your courses are kind of like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of the best way, like a gateway drug into your into your coaching program? Do you see people who take part in the courses and then say, "Hey, Jordan, I find it super valuable. I'd like to find out more about your coaching program." Is that how it tends to work, or?
Yeah, let's give you a couple of examples of how this has also evolved, because this is all really interesting stuff. And I'm sure it's probably different for different coaches who've been through this, but when I started it, I had initially wanted it to be standalone. I wanted it to be something that was out there that people could take. I didn't need to be involved, wash my hands of it, make money, and like obviously help change the world, help people. But I didn't have to like physically exchange my time for money. And then I was like, this is not the way it needs to go. The biggest impact that I'm going to have is actually coaching people. And I enjoyed that. I don't want to take that away. So then I started selling it as a package with my course. So like you couldn't just buy the course alone. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to actually segment the course, because there's some people, like you said, who come in on the lower end of your value ladder. If you're familiar with the value ladder, you have people on this lower end who need an entryway, gateway drug, like you said, to get to maybe a top play. And maybe they're just someone who wants to do this on their own. Cool. And then I started, like, as I kept going through that, I was like, okay, well, this course is too valuable to be at a low price, like as a whole. And it also makes the most impact when it's with me. So how do I create versions of this that can still somehow coexist? So I played around with different pricing models. I played around with, if they just wanted the course, they get a month of like the mastermind access, and they can buy the course, and that's a certain number of $100. And then my high tickets, a certain number of thousands of dollars. And you just kind of play in this until it really makes sense for you. And where I'm at now is like, I think where I'm going to is I've got my high ticket program, which is the highest impact. You get a lot of access to me, get access to the community, you get access to all the materials. That's going to be the biggest like transformation, right? That's always going to be on the higher end of that value ladder, thousands of dollars. You go somewhere towards the middle, it's still just the course alone, and then some mastermind access, very limited access to me. Then you go to the lowest part, which I'm still, coming out with different ideas of how this product's going to look, but it's splinters of the bigger course. So you take out, as you go through, let's see an example from your stuff. So when you think about what's really impactful in your business, when you go do a training, for instance, what is one of the topics that ends up being really impactful for people?
So that's a very good question. And I've been trying to figure this out through the corporate sessions. I always pull people at the end to find out which topic do you find most valuable and which would you like more information on. So I've kind of been doing my own market research that way through the corporates. And one of the things that has been always very popular is like how to create content. So I always talk
Yeah.
about how the strategy behind it, the measurement, distribution. But anyone always talks about how do I create the content? What are the best
Yeah. Yeah.
practices? What are the tools? What are the things that I can do to make it effective and impactful? So that's one of the first things that we shot recently. We shot a first video course last week,
Cool.
and so that came through just people saying, it's super
Yeah.
helpful and it's been highly rated for our corporate session. So I said, okay, let me try to do a standalone kind of a mini course just on that
Exactly.
and see what works.
I think that's great, right? Because you've taken a splinter of maybe this bigger, because obviously the session and a lot of the things that are taught, there's a larger scheme or system at play, right? It's not just how to create content. So for me, one of those might be updating your LinkedIn with the right keywords so that hiring managers see your profile and, they are, you look like the right type of person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that comes up a lot of LinkedIn stuff. So I'm like, okay, well, why don't I, out of the bigger course, take out the sliver on LinkedIn and create just the mini version of that so that it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not out of context to be out of that, but it still provides value and it still meets someone where they're at, where maybe LinkedIn is their most pressing issue. Within the marketing of that mini course, you have to have ways for them to get to the top too. So you create the demand for the top of the ladder or going up the ladder through the marketing or fulfillment of the splinters, right? Or whatever. So maybe within that mini course that you have, there's a call to action at certain points that if they need more help with coaching on actually implementing, because that's the thing, you give people choices, right? It's like, hey, I can give you all this free stuff. And that's what I've been doing is like, I take splinters of my content in that course and say, okay, what am I willing to give away for free that's going to make impact? But I know that once they get a taste of that, they're like, we're going to want more. So you give that away for free and then you give them the option. You say, hey, do you need help implementing this? Because I know that this content is valuable, but there's a lot of people out there who need the accountability. They need someone to hold their hand. They need the additional set of eyes, all those things. So I just kind of play around in that. And I'm basically setting up for a job seeking service, which I'm going to be doing at kind of a monthly. So it'll be just a monthly membership. And, you just pay for that and you get a certain amount of targeted jobs, remote jobs each week, because a lot of people are just searching all these job boards for hours and hours at a time. They're setting up all these job alerts and they're just wasting time actually trying to find the jobs. Yeah. So that's one thing. I know I went on a rant there.
No, it's good. It's good. Like I said, it definitely helps me visualize kind of what I would need to be doing as well. So if I just quickly recap that, you said you have on the higher end of the ladder, you have your very hands-on, access to you, access to get to the full program, the classes, the community membership, kind of like everything, like a one size, full package. And then you said the mid level of the ladder, you have a little bit of access to you and then access to like the full online courses, maybe a bit of the community.
A little bit of access to the community. And then basically like the self-paced version of this, the strategy, right? The system.
Got it. Okay. So a little bit of access to the community. What does that mean? A little bit of access to the community? Just for
monthly. So basically someone who's on that higher end of the spectrum, they get lifetime access to the community, which has, those weekly job postings. It has additional content and it has other people who are also going through the job search. So you kind of find these little levers, right? Like what are the levers that you can pull that make it a little bit more valuable, and then start to play around with, hey, where does this fit into that? How does that, like, how do I assign value to that thing? So for me, for instance, if you look on, the site where I have my course, it's like, if you buy the course just standalone, you get the 1 month of jobs. So you get 3 jobs a week for 1 month. You get 1 month access to the exclusive content, and then 1 month access to the community. And that's included with the purchase of the self-paced course. Now you can continue access to that for $40 a month after that, right? So you can still maintain access to that, or you can upgrade and receive a credit to have the coached version with me as well. So I'm just trying to always give people paths of choice, because you're going to meet various different people who have various needs. And one of the hardest things about this is that sometimes it can seem like you may cannibalize yourself.
Yeah.
So to say, you think someone should be in the low tier, but really they should be in the high tier. But if you were to pitch someone a low tier versus the high tier, they're always going to pick the low, right?
Yeah.
So you'd be like, oh, well, of course I'll take that one. So I think starting with a top down approach is what helps me too. I'm always evaluating people from the high end, not the low end, because the low end should be more of kind of, at least for me, is more kind of like organic. People come in the system and then, you know, they flow into some of those things, and then I'm giving them upgrade paths. But any of the paid ad stuff that I do or the phone calls that I'm getting on, those are for the high ticket stuff.
Got it. Okay. I think that makes perfect sense. And I think you bring up another good point is, you know, it's complicated enough even to get down the structure. Like you said, you've changed it 5 or 6 times in the past couple of years.
Oh yeah.
I think another super difficult thing is actually just marketing it. So putting the program is one thing. Actually marketing it is a whole different beast in itself. And I learned this when I was doing my book, you know, putting together the book was only like, you know, 20% of the actual work, 80% was actually marketing it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned doing paid ads, probably like, you know, what, 50-minute consultations. What are some of the things you're doing to get people within your kind of path to find out more about that high ticket operator that you have?
Yeah. And I have got a lot of ways that I do that organically as well, but with the paid side, I have a webinar that is evergreen. So people can go in there and watch the free training. And if they want to jump on the call at the end of the webinar, they have that choice. But you know, there's to be very transparent and frank with you, it's like this whole industry and like the sales part of this sometimes feels weird, and you really want to take yourself out of it as much as possible. And what I mean by that is, when I get on a call with somebody, my only goal is that they leave that call better. They feel better. They feel like they have a better sense of where they need to go. And if they want to work with me, I want to work with them, I've given them that option. That's not as easy as it sounds. You know, going on these kind of sales calls and looking at them from a sales perspective, it's like, you know, you want to hold people accountable and you want them to do what's best for them, but people are going to have their own hurdles and fears to get over too. So it's this whole mix between how do you be authentic to yourself, how do you be authentic to them, how do you provide value, and then how do you grow your business at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. Something I try to practice as well. So I have a ton of different calls each month with people who, you know, try to provide advice to some potential clients, some not really. But yeah, to your point, like my goal is if they can learn at least one thing from that session, just one thing, then I'm happy. Hopefully it's a valuable use of their time as well.
Yeah, but you also got to be careful, Joe, because if you coach on that call, you're actually putting a Band-Aid on an amputated leg, right? So like what you want to be careful of, and I'm 100% guilty of this. There's this difference between going on that coaching mode and going on what I call like diagnosing doctor mode, right? In that first call when you're with somebody, you got to be a doctor. You have to diagnose where's the pain at, what's the pain causing, because a lot of the people that come onto the calls with me, for instance, they don't realize how much they're actually struggling. Like people will talk themselves out of the pain and fear that they actually have, especially if it's on a call with someone who they think is going to sell them something. So they'll hide things, they'll lie about things. And my goal on that is to get people extremely honest with themselves, honest with me, open up. And if I can help them, I'll let you know how. And I find that is a really good way to approach those, because if I go on there and I'm like, okay, well, here's what you should do for your LinkedIn, blah, 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 blah. And if I went through that, gave them the learnings, the actual things that they should do, they would leave that call and say, okay, well, I'll just go do that. But they will not actually improve to the point where I think they could if they actually worked with me.
Now, I feel like your coach would be down. Oh, it's good. It's super valuable. So I guess, yeah, if I could dive in a bit deeper in that, how do you get people to, what are some of the questions you said, like you said, asking good questions is the key to, you know, the success in a lot of what you do. How do you ask good questions? Because I think, like I said, I am super guilty of that. I too tend to give a diagnosis rather than, I still try to find out about the business, but I guess I don't dig as deep, or as salespeople say, like really poke the wound. I
Yeah.
like, is that something that you do, is like, find out what it is and like say, let me poke it a bit and see if that see if that hurts.
Sure. I think that the whole mindset of this has to be reframed if you want to be good at it. And what I mean by that is the only way that you can truly help somebody, and this is if you believe in what you offer, right?
Yeah.
You have to believe it. It has to come from a place where you actually believe you're doing what's best for the person.
Yeah.
If you're going to do what's best for the person, you have to let them be honest with themselves and with you. And what that takes are questions that lead them down a path of exasperating the pain that they're in. Because sometimes, like I said, people don't even realize like how much stuff is actually impacting them. So some of the questions within that vein would be, some of them are more simple, but I like to start very, very broad with, what's the biggest challenge that you're having with your job search? And then from there, it's just a curiosity that you go down. So you start with kind of what I would call factual, statistical based questions. So like, if you're a doctor, like, where does it hurt? Like, oh, my knee. Okay. So like, how many applications have you sent out? 50. Like you're doing kind of data questions first. Once you find some of those data questions, they'll lead you to more emotional questions. You're going to ask you like, how does that impact other parts of your life? Because what I want to know is this job search something that is actually urgent for you to fix right now? Because you've got kids that you need to feed and you have all these other things that you need to do. Like, is that the need that we're in? Or do you have a bunch of savings and, it's not really a big deal and you can sit on it for another 6 months? So as you follow that pain down, then you have to frame basically what it is that you're offering in a direct correlation with solving those pain points. And as you go down that path, still asking more questions, still being curious, asking what it's costing them to not be where they're at. I think that's one of the big ones, because if they don't realize that there's a cost associated, whoever you're working with on the branding side, there's a cost for not having a brand.
Yeah.
How much are they leaving on the table for that? And then what's it worth to them to fix some of those issues? And I think if you really dive into that, I'll just give an example. Like I had a guy today where we had gone through a lot of the questions and we got to the end and I could tell this is not a big enough pain for him. The program that I described to him, he said it was a 7 out of 10. I was like, no problem, man. Sounds like it's not the best fit. And we talked for a little bit longer on why it was a 7 out of 10, why it wasn't 10 out of 10. And what I came to the conclusion was this isn't the thing for him, because a 70% is not 100%. And I have to be 100%. They have to be 100%. And that's kind of my rule around that.
Once again, I feel like I'm getting a free coach list, and I'm definitely going to promote this to, like I said, my network, which is quite broad. So hopefully it'll change.
I hope you promote your podcast to your network.
No, I'll definitely promote the heck out of this. Like I said, hopefully some new clients coming your way. But like I said, I think really, really good tips in terms of the actual discovery call, the analogy from doctors. I don't want to, dig too deep into your marketing, but I think one thing that I noticed you do, and I wonder if it has an impact, is you do the weekly series. I forget what they're called, but every Wednesday at a certain time, you do like a weekly series on a particular topic. How does that fit into what you're doing, or is it something that completely off the side where it's just like a branding exercise for you?
Oh no, I've done the whole like do the off the side branding exercises before that don't make any sense, and those I think you learn after you do enough of those that like you'd only have so much time in life. So everything I do now is very directly applicable to everything. So that series, it's called Remote Weekly Spotlight. I feature different people who run successful remote businesses or HR professionals who know how to get hired by remote companies. So for me, that's a great chance to offer a platform for people that are doing the hiring, so that when my potential students come in and look at my stuff, they're like, wow, this guy's got the network. Like he's got access. He's got all this. And so I'll give you an example. I have an interview that I'm doing in a few weeks with an HR director at a fully remote company in Europe. She said, before we even done our interview, she said, yeah, just let me know if you ever have any good candidates and we'll take a look at them. So I've made myself 10 times more valuable to the job seekers. I'm also making myself valuable to other people within the remote work world. And that's given me some, I don't know, clout in some ways, because, you know, I've interviewed some of the top people. I had Darren Murph on 2 weeks ago, who is the head of remote at the largest all remote company in the world. I was so nervous to interview him, by the way.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But just amazing guy, like literally one of the most amazing conversations we had. And I always, you know, do research and make sure that I'm uh, on top of what I'm going to ask those people and ask them things differently. So you have great questions as well. I think that's one of your strong suits. So, but you know, when you have a guest on and you can actually have a good substantive conversation, it's just money, and it creates a connection that otherwise you wouldn't have.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good point, and thank you for that. It's definitely been a journey. I was just telling one of my team members the other day, if you watch the initial series we do, it was quite bad. So I think it's just come through time, making it more of a conversation than kind of reading the
Yeah.
bullet point script that I did with the first couple sessions. No, I think it's a really good point. I think what you do very well, and this is something I'm taking note of in the back of my head, is connecting all the pieces. So, you know, like I said, from a branding and marketing point of view, having those conversations with people that will actually benefit what you're doing. So, for example, if it's connecting people who are looking for a job with employers, it's building those relationships. And I think that's what people fail to understand about doing series like this. It's also about building relationships. Like, I get to know you a bit more. Like, I'm happy to support you in any way now. So I think we wouldn't have had that opportunity if we hadn't do something like this. But like I said, I love that it's all integrated into what you do. Maybe there's a call to action. It's the soft call to action that leads into, you know, everything else you're doing. So there's a nice flow. I think I've seen, like, you are very like you're structured, but then you have like a nice flow that goes into everything you're doing. So it's helped the business in that way.
Like you, man, I did the stuff that, you know, when you start, you just have kind of no idea. You're like, I just kind of throwing stuff at the wall, but you need to go through that too.
Yeah.
To be like, you have to be good. You have to be bad. Like, you have to start somewhere. So a lot of people get really nervous of like, well, what if I'm not good? It's like, you're not going to be good. That's not the expectation. If you want to be good, you have to have the commitment to be bad. That's really the key. And so when my first interview series actually started in late 2017, and I did a YouTube interview series called 1 Minute Weekly, and it was right when LinkedIn announced native video uploading.
Yeah.
So like that's how I got, I don't want to say big on LinkedIn, but that's how I got really into the platform. That's how I got recognized, was for that. And if you look at those interviews,
yeah,
I interviewed like some of the top influencers on LinkedIn. I interviewed Goldie Chan for one of them, and Steve Odell from Tenzo T. Like a lot of the people that I feel like I see just exploding in comments. Quentin alums, like all those people. I interviewed them in person, and that was the cool part. Like because I was traveling, because I was remote. Now you see it all come together, right?
Exactly. And I noticed about that because I saw the one with Goldie Chan right before this, and I mean you're right there talking to her. So I think, like I said, that fits into, like I said, your remote working, because you get to travel around, you get to meet people, you get to do it on the spot. Which I mean, if we were doing this in person, it would be, you know, a little bit better. But I think, you know, that's once again another advantages of the remote working lifestyle, is you get to meet different people from around the world, have these conversations we wouldn't necessarily have or otherwise.
Yeah, and that personal connection of being there, it's hard to replicate. So I was actually really, like, for my own personal brand, I was like really against doing like interviews over the like, I was fine being interviewed, but I didn't want my interviews to be online. And then once COVID happened, I was like, I gotta do this. So I was like all my live streaming and stuff. You just kind of adapt, right? You adapt with the changes that happen, and do what you can with what you have.
Yeah, no, I was the same way. We had shot our interviews in person, and obviously it's all online now. And I think it works to some extent, but yeah, it may not have that additional layer of kind of, you know, an in-person session would have.
Yeah, and you seem to, I mean, you had a little bit of cinematographic chops. Because I was looking on your website and you had a couple of like short films on there.
Yeah, so I I don't talk about that much, but I used to be kind of a videographer and editor in my spare time. That's what my first job was. I was a videographer for the Oklahoma Small Business Development Center.
Wow. Okay.
So I was responsible from storyboarding to interviewing to shooting it, to
Mm-hmm.
editing it, to publishing it on their website. So uh, something I haven't done in a while because it's a bit time consuming, but it's definitely something I love doing.
And how applicable are those skills though? Because it feels like those skills would bleed into everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think to your point, the compliment you gave, I think it's come through years. So I was a journalist before this as well. I know you're part of
Mm-hmm.
the Forbes Council. I was a Forbes contributor for several years. So
Yep.
that was another opportunity to find out how to ask questions and have a conversation because it's not something that comes naturally, I think, to me. I'm very much an introvert. But I
Mm.
think through that, it kind of forced me to better understand the other person, figure out their point of view, and then ask questions that the audience would have. So I'm constantly have the audience on my shoulder. That's why I'm asking some of these questions. I'm like, they're gonna ask me like, why didn't you have that question?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm trying to ask those questions now so that there's it's very clear for them.
Yeah. And it's funny because a lot of introverts are really good public speakers, and people that do like bigger sessions, like some of the best comedians in the world are all introverts. And I think it's so funny. It's because they only have to talk one way. They don't actually have to have a conversation.
Exactly. I was just telling one of my team members yesterday because I was telling her like I feel so much more comfortable speaking on a stage with 3,000 people than I do
Mm-hmm.
speaking with 3 people off stage. I'm terrible at it.
Yep.
I'm
You're
so
like, don't come up to me afterwards, by the way. Okay.
exactly. I would tell. I'm that person. Literally, I told my team member, I will run off stage as fast as I can. I'll go to the side door and I will run out of the stadium, simply because like I'm terrible at small talk. I'm terrible at those like small group interactions. But 3,000,
Yeah.
I'm completely fine with now. It's very weird. Like, how
It's
does that
a,
even work out?
it's an interesting dynamic, but I think it's a comfort zone thing. Has
Yeah,
to be.
absolutely. Well, Jordan, thank you so much, my friend. This has been an absolute pleasure. I have learned a ton that I've, like I said, been taking mental notes. Definitely going to promote the heck out of this and hopefully give some new clients your way as well. How can people get in touch with you if they want to find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you having me on, first of all. And either way, yeah, it was good discussion. I'm never in it for the clients. I'm in it for a good conversation, good fun. And if people come my way, then awesome. TheRemoteJobCoach.com. I feel like that domain's pretty easy to remember.
Yeah,
Hopefully, TheRemoteJobCoach.com is the best way. And there's plenty of contact information there. There's free resources. So I cater to anybody wherever you're on in your path to your remote lifestyle. There's stuff there for you.
awesome. So check it out. So Jordan, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate your time and your sharing your insights and experiences. I learned a lot.
And your audience learned a lot that you don't actually drink coffee. So you're welcome.
Yes, they found out my dirty little secret.
Thanks
So
so much, Joe. I appreciate it.
awesome. Well, if you enjoyed today's interview with Jordan, please feel free to share the heck out of it. Follow Jordan on LinkedIn. Check out the remote jobcoach.com. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.